This is the monthly conversation that happens on Twitter Spaces, Zoom, and YouTube. So we are live streaming on YouTube for those who may want to watch the video edition of this discussion. Today I have the honor of hosting a distinguished member of this society, the Honorable Alice Alaso, a member of the Alliance for National Transformation, a former member of parliament. She unsuccessfully tried to go back to parliament a few weeks back, and she will tell us about all that as we get the conversation underway. So at this point, allow me test Honorable Alice Alaso's microphone. Honorable, can you hear me?
Hello, Godwin, I can hear you, and good evening.
Okay, that sounds perfect. So the format of this conversation is that we'll have a normal conversation with her, a kind of chat with her. We don't want this to look like interviews where there's grilling and people sweating and all that. It's just a normal conversation for us to find out what's happening in the party. So after the introduction, we shall have that conversation, and then at some point we shall bring in the audience. So if she says something, or if you notice something in the course of the discussion that you want to react to, I'll request that you jot it down so that when the time comes for the audience to speak, I give you the microphone and then you can put your question forth to her. For the nth time, let me also announce that the conversation is happening on Twitter, Facebook, Zoom, YouTube. So the other two platforms being YouTube and Zoom have the video version, while Twitter has the audio version. So whichever works for you best. If you're listening to the audio and want the video later, perfect. So, Honorable, you're very welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much. It's indeed a privilege to be part of this conversation this evening. Thank you for hosting the show, and I am thankful to our listeners that are already part of this engagement, and I say good evening to them as well.
All right, so let's get into the conversation. So I've been hearing the name Alice Alaso for such a long time in Uganda's politics. I may be wrong, but I think as far back as I was in primary. So I'm going to request that for the benefit of everyone here, you just take us through your political journey briefly, the kind of positions you held, the kind of inspiration that got you into politics. Just bring us up to speed with your life in this thing called politics.
Well, Godwin, first, I don't think I've been in politics too long. My little journey of politics, one day, once upon a time in secondary school, I became the head prefect in the O-level. And then it went off. Then I came to Makerere and became a morale booster for Norbert Mao in his campaigns. And then I didn't contest for anything. Then in 2001, when I had changed jobs from teaching at Teso College Aloet now to the district gender office, 2001, I joined elective politics as the woman member, woman representative of Soroti district, where I had the privilege to serve for 2 terms. So that's 2001 to 2010. And then 2011, I contested for the Serere district seat because the district was divided. And then I served Serere for 5 years to 2016. In 2016, I was involved in an election. I contested again. And I think that has been the most horrible experience in my life in electoral politics, because it was one election where you have a DR form which says you have 600 votes, and then the registrar is reading 00 for you, and then you go to court and the registrar is asked where she got the extra 18,000, and then she says she doesn't know, but nonetheless she declared your opponent. Then you come to the Court of Appeal and they say, no, the other judge erred, blah, 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 and then you are dragged to court, so you pay costs. And then in 2021, I contested again for the same Serere district. And in 2021, there was no murder, no beating, no these things that I normally see. I was only shocked that the result was not in my favor, but then I didn't have to complain because possibly the people had changed their minds. I don't know. I didn't even try to verify. I took it in good faith. And then yesterday, and the story of Serere County by-election is very fresh in our minds. We saw strange things by 7 o'clock. And by midday, it was the army, it was the RDCs, it was anything. And then, well, I didn't go through. So I am here, but I continue to be very, very engaged in politics. That is the elective side of my political career. There is also the other one of being very active in the work of the political party. I have journeyed in the life of the FDC and as part of the founding team. And then because of differences in strategy, some of us opted to get out. And then I became part of the team that started the Alliance for National Transformation, where I now serve as the acting national coordinator. So I am very, very active politically, and I don't think I am about to retire. Yes, Godwin.
That has brought us up to speed with the journey that you. So I want now to take us to that part of the formation of ANT.
Yes.
This is 2019. ANT is about 5 years old now, if my guessing is right. By the way, I guessed it right that I was hearing your name as far back as primary. It was when you said 2001. In 2001, I was in P1. That's the interesting bit that in 2001 I was in P1.
Yeah,
so
great.
Now, at that point when ANT is formed, what gave you that final push to say, I am out of FDC, I am going with ANT? What are those principles? What are those characteristics that you saw that encouraged you to take that decision?
So first, the roles that I was performing in FDC, I had served as the Secretary General for 10 years. And then around 2012, I had contested as a deputy president. So I was deputizing General Muntu. And when he offered himself for re-election in 2017, then he left me in charge of the party. And so we went through that election, and it was clear that lines on strategy had been clearly drawn. We belonged to a team that was committed to building the party as an institution, and then deploying its capacity to all the other attendant calls, if it is to activism, if it is to elections, whatever it is. We say that we must have an institution, a strong institution called the FDC. Then the other team that was contesting had an agenda on basically defiance. And they argued that elections had failed, and therefore it was going to be, they wanted a quick solution, basically one party, one strategy, and that strategy was called defiance. So when we went to Nambole, the voters, the delegates, opted for the Honorable Muriato Boy Patrick. And then we thought to ourselves, well, given this kind of scenario, we certainly will either, if we stay in the party, will be rendered totally idle, or we become a group that will be disrupting the rest of the people when they are implementing their agenda of defiance all the time. And then, of course, some of us were very, very key actors, apart from being in the management of the political party. Some of us were people who had been actively elected as members of parliament. Now, when you're a member of parliament, you know you don't defy your way into the ballot box. You must have committees, you must have structures that will help you protect or galvanize the vote, protect it until you are delivered to parliament. So we realized that our continued stay would not be helpful both to the FDC, but also to us and our political careers. And that is when we started having conversations on the way forward. And I served as a convener. I gave myself a title because there was no way of calling me. And when I called meetings, people would wonder who is calling the meeting. So then we just said, okay, let's call her the convener. And so I became the convener. Fast forward to the new formation. Then we had a consultative process, which took us about 2 good years. I will tell the listener that ANT is, to the best of my knowledge, the only political party in Uganda that has been registered and fulfilled the requirements, the primary and secondary requirements of the Political Parties Organizations Act. There is no other party that has been registered under that law, or under that detail, because it was a very rigorous process. Got promoters and subsequently launched the party in 2019. So that has been our journey as a political party.
Okay, so this is now 5 years later. I've been learning things about babies recently, and a baby of 5 years relatively is walking, is talking, is perhaps already in middle class. How is the party doing in this infancy? How has it been over the last 5 years from the inception in 2019 to today? What have been the progresses and things that you can report on about?
Well, first of all, getting the party itself registered was a milestone, because as I said, it took us 2 years to do that process. It also took us countrywide mobilization, both of resources and individuals called promoters, the legal issues around it. So that was a big achievement. Secondly, and then we had to get a critical team of leaders. As of now, I still believe that we are one party that has a very, very credible and adorable leadership team, both from former members of parliament and also our local teams on the ground. People who have very good track record, people who are believers in values. So that's the second achievement. The third achievement was to begin marketing the values-based philosophy of the party, and then also building the infrastructure of the party. Here, of course, it's been a slow process, but fortunately for the ANT, at the interim level, that coordination structure, we have it almost everywhere in the country, up to sub-county level. And then we are working to extend it in some places to parishes and to villages. Now, that coordination team is the framework currently that we're using to advance and grow the party. The other achievement was that come the 2021 election, we were then able to field candidates and participate across the nation of Uganda. And in that election, the outcomes at the lower level were that we were able to get district councillors, sub-county councillors. We were also able to get town council representatives, and we were able to get one district chairperson. And you know, a local government is a district is a local government of its own. So we consider it a great privilege that we are able to win the elections in Terego district, and the ANT is heading the Terego government. We were not successful for so many reasons, which we will not be able to go into at the parliamentary level. What is very clear to us is that even those who had an outrightly clear opportunity to have got into parliament, about 2 or 3 members, they, for some reason, were locked out. And then there are those who think maybe it went the other way, like me, maybe it went the other way, could have possibly lost, I don't know. So, but that is our position. The other big achievement was that we were able to present a very credible presidential candidate. We presented General Muntu, and the feedback we got from voters is that they feel he is a very good and credible candidate. And we hope that the votes will grow as we go along.
All right. So at the parliamentary level and at the presidential level, like you already enunciated, the party didn't perform expectations. So what are some of the key lessons that you picked from that point, and how are you trying to rectify those? I mean, 2026 is around the corner.
Well, at the presidential, I do not know whether we even thought that we would have had that miracle at that time, because many others had failed before. And so we were just new entrants, and our infrastructure was not as good, but also the I don't know, the position of this government, the incumbent position to the effect that they would not even tolerate even those who would possibly have won. You know, you've often heard that the president has said they were not brought in by the vote, so the likelihood of them living by the vote is almost not there. But nonetheless, we know, we accept the result we got, and we are grateful for it. And so we think that the way forward again is putting up the party infrastructure at the community level so that they're able to mobilize. Votes are in the villages. Let them talk to their members of their families, of their clans, of their communities and groups, and then we grow that vote. But also we think that that vote then has to be protected. And again, it's going to be the same team that will do vote protection. As far as members of parliament are concerned, we are involved in the process of mentoring. We are involved in the process of, we did a review of the 2021 election, and we got a number of issues, a number of ideas that we are currently implementing in order to better the chances of those that contest on the ticket, but also to help the party provide the necessary support to help those that contest. So it's a big thing in terms of communication, in terms of resource mobilization, in terms of putting in place the committees and so on and so forth. It's a big thing.
Okay, so fast forward, this is 2023, and we are past the half-year mark. We are left with fewer months to the end than those we've lived through. So what have been the key highlights of the party for this particular year, 2023? What are the things that you've done? What are the things that you hope to do? What are the lessons you've learned as a party? Where have there been some failures, if any? Just take us through this year.
So for this year, we have been able to we started the year with the Serere by-election, actually. And in Serere, we were able to draw lessons in terms of working with other political parties, in terms of mobilizing resources, in terms of creating what we would need to create visibility for a candidate. We learned those lessons, and hopefully that we'll be able to replicate them in 2021 to help the candidates that offer themselves. The second thing this year is that we have started work on a program which is two-pronged, actually, a two-in-one program. That two-in-one is to partly build on party policy positions, so developing alternative policies, and in this case, particularly on aspects of migration and dealing with things like rural to urban migration, trafficking in persons. I just want to say that we don't want to wait until that time, then we begin to talk to people about the manifesto. So what we are doing is to cover some aspects of the manifesto right now, the policy agenda, enrich, review it. And then in the same program, we are also taking ANT to the grassroots communities where we talk to the people, we introduce ANT, and they get to know. Because by 2021, when we went to look for votes, we hadn't reached out to many districts, really. Not many people had even heard about ANT. We didn't have the, what they call it? We didn't have a wave, we didn't have a big bang. So our approach was that we should have gone to the people, but time and resources were not in our favor. And so this time around, since 2021, even last year we were able to go and introduce ANT to Soroti district, to Kayunga, and to Mayuge. We talked to people at that level, at the community level. So if you go to those districts, they know what we stand for. They know the aspirations that this party has for Uganda. And since this year, we've been to Kamwenge district. We've also been to Isinjiro, and lately we were in Chegegwa. And we are hoping that in the next few days, we will be able to go to another set of districts doing the same thing. So basically, once the community awareness is created, then we will follow it with the building of village level structures. We will empower our coordinators to build the village level structures, and then that will provide the impetus that brings the structures upwards. Hopefully, by the time of our next election, that structures, that presence will be in most parts of the country.
All right, thank you. So for those who have just joined us, this conversation is happening on Twitter Spaces, and I see it's not being recorded here, but what is being recorded is also the one on YouTube, meaning that after this conversation is done, you can always go back and look for the ANT official page on YouTube and then watch the recorded version, which will have the advantage of having the video. So if you're an expert who thinks, is she speaking the truth? Is she lying? You can look at the body language, the other side that you don't have the advantage of seeing here. After this round of questions, I'm going to take the next round, then we'll let in the audience, you can ask a question and then participate actively before we bring the conversation to the end. Again, I want to extend my sincere gratitude to all of you that have joined this space. I hope that you're enjoying it and we can have a more meaningful conversation as we proceed. So back to you, Honorable. The big news over this month actually was perhaps a negative one. That's the defection of Paul Mwiru, a founding member of the ANT, who now moved, fortunately, an opposition party, being the National Unity Platform. So I want to know, like, what does this mean for the party if we are desperate for members whom we believe in and who believe in us, then we are losing even some of the few committed ones that we have?
Godwin, probably before I get to that, there was a segment that I forgot to respond to that has to do with the current challenges the party is experiencing. The biggest challenge, there are not many, the biggest challenge the ANT is confronted with is a resource challenge. we do not have the money to implement our activities. And that's where our membership should come in. The little we get from member contributions, 2,000, 5,000, and they're not quite regular. So without resources, you end up with activities that should have taken place speedily. You can end up doing them for 2 years because you do not have the money to move teams, actors, and logistics to where they should be. And I would like to appeal to all those who believe in the ANT values and philosophy to think through. Politics is not cheap. Politics is a very, very expensive endeavor. Anybody sitting anywhere and wishing the ANT well without wanting to contribute 5,000 shillings, contribute their time, contribute their ideas, that person is not helping himself or herself. So members must contribute ideas, contribute time, volunteer, do something that will advance the cause of the party. Once we do that, the collective of those resources is what will make ANT visible and present at the community and at the national level. Now, to the question of Honorable Mwiru, yes, I saw that on media, and Honorable Mwiru was gone to the NUP. We had worked very closely with Honorable Mwiru at the national level of the party, and therefore his decision to change political home, one came as a surprise to us, but also it made us sad that he would not be available again to continue to do the work that he used to do. But nonetheless, we as a party decided that we really must respect Honorable Mwiru's decision. Honorable Mwiru is mature, he is a lawyer, he's a veteran politician. How can we think that he erred? No, he couldn't have erred. He could have made a conscious decision. And so we wish Honorable Mwiru the very best in NUP. I want to even believe that someday when again we and NUP agree to work together, we will be holding hands, hand in hand with Honorable Mwiru like we are doing in the Serere by-election, and we advance this cause forward. So I am not, of course, able to, I don't know the specific reasons apart from what everybody has heard on social media, but that is it. We wish him well. And I just appeal to members that we make conscious decisions. And so even the members make very conscious decisions. Your being in ANT should be a very conscious decision. Otherwise, the political terrain in Uganda, we are lucky, as Godwin, you have said, that luckily he moved to NUP. The political terrain in Uganda is very rough. What if the undesirable had happened? Somebody moves to NRM. Would we close shop? We wouldn't close shop. We would still have to press on. And that's why I encourage all our members to stick there, basing on the faith, on the values that you have. That's one. Two, building a values-based institution and even marketing values-based leadership is a painstaking process. It's not the thing that promises to, get to State House in 100 days. It doesn't promise anything like that. It doesn't even, we are talking about changing the political culture, because we've seen a repetition. Every 5 years, there is an election. And when that election takes place, what happens is that you hope that you are now bringing in new leadership, but the challenges facing Uganda as a community even get worse. I was privileged to be in the 7th, 8th, and 9th parliament, but every other year, from the 10th to the 11th, you hear people crying. It's getting weaker and weaker and weaker. You hear about cries about the judiciary. So we are convinced that this aspect of changing the culture, the political culture, is going to be a long process. It is going to be painstaking. It is also going to be very deliberate, and to require a lot of patience and a lot of commitment on the part of those who feel they are building a new political culture.
Okay, I have a friend who loves to say that those we are fighting against have a lot of money. They are very well organized, and we'll never beat them unless we get to a point where we are better organized and willing to sacrifice our money for the causes we believe. So when you talked about people contributing and sacrificing for the party, that resonated very well with what he has always told me. Now, let's turn to the demographics of Uganda. This country is very youthful. Statistics put the youth population as high as 70%. Of course, a huge chunk of that are those below 18. I think they say they have the median age is about 15. But a huge number of those who go to the ballot and vote legally, without rigging, without forging their age, is youthful, probably about 60% of the voters. What are the deliberate strategies that the party has to tap into that, to attract and retain the youth within the party?
So we do take cognizance of that important aspect of our demographics. And that's why at the helm of decision making and at every level of decision making in the ANT, we have integrated youth leadership. We don't believe that they should be peripheral. We believe that they should be part and parcel of the integral structure that runs the party, just like the women. And our understanding is that when they are with us inside there, they will be able to appreciate how their party is constituted, how it is run, what are the aspirations, and what are the challenges. We have come up with the strategy of the youth strategy of the party. It details a number of things that our young people would want to do in the youth league, that the party will want to do in the mainstream, but with and for the young people. And hopefully resources becoming available, we would be able to get into youth spaces and engage them accordingly. And basically that. So in terms of paperwork, we are good to go. In terms of resources, we are not running with the youth agenda, just like we are not running with any other mainstream or women because of those limitations. But in terms of mentoring, in terms of engaging, we do it every time we have say the national leadership meeting, then our young people are part and parcel. Most of our leaders now in the districts and in the sub-counties are even below. I think most of them are below 30 years. That keeps them in the youthful bracket as well. So we have a clear youth agenda. Agenda for young people in terms of education, in terms of agriculture, in terms of business and enterprise. We have articulated some of those in the policy agenda and also in our previous manifesto. We have an idea, but more importantly, we also believe that leadership, as those of us who are beyond the youth bracket, have a role to play in ensuring that the transition process is bridged. Where the country currently is should I say, at a level of multiple organ failure. Nothing works. We have people in parliament calling themselves youth, but you don't see a parliament that is working in to advance the cause for the young people. And therefore, we do not necessarily think that having a person of 20 years as the national coordinator of the ANT will change much. What will change much is that we agree One, towards engagement, towards involvement, towards the agenda that takes cognizance of those youthful demographics.
All right. So there are probably young people listening in here, youthful people who are undecided up to now. When I still used to go to church, the pastor would say, if you've given your life to Christ, come to the podium. And then that's how you give your life to Christ, basically. So if someone is listening in and they want to give their life to the ANT, having listened to all you've said, how do they go about that? What's the process of becoming a member? If they want to not be a member of the ANT, but make a contribution, say a monetary contribution, are there numbers they can send the money to that you're willing to divulge to the public now, or a bank account, or anything like that?
Well, so to make their lives easy, it would be better if they either take my email or take my number. My email would be much easier if you put it on YouTube, alasoashanut@gmail.com. Now, when that conversation ensues, I'll be able to find out what kind of donations do they want to give. And then I am able to challenge them, because there are small donations, one-time donations, big donations. I can't say all that in this conversation. So my email address would be very helpful to such a person. In terms of becoming a member, those who want to commit, all you need to do is to secure a card. You buy a card at 3,000 shillings. That is a membership card. But there are also other cards which are bigger than 3,000 shillings, from 50 to 5 million shillings. You can, again, use that same email address or the party email address if you make an inquiry in it. Once you make an inquiry, then we will be able to follow through this matter and guide you how to link up with the Youth League as well, or the branch where you come from, for those that are willing to come out. And again, for those that want to stay in the background but support, there are lots of areas where you can support your party. You can support the party financially. You can deploy your skills and talent in the service of the party. You may not necessarily even have to announce I'm ANT, but when you go to play football out there, you mobilize a team. Somebody who is openly ANT can then come and talk to the team. So you deploy your talent, you deploy your resources, you know, tell others about ANT and pray for the ANT.
Okay, that's very encouraging. The contribution can be anything: mobilization, monetary, even praying.
Yes.
So the last few weeks, in fact, the last several months, I've seen this new challenge to opposition parties, the intrigue that plays out in the open. The old party you were a member of, that is the Forum for Democratic Change, which also the General Mokisha Muntu was a member of. Most of the top people in the echelons of ANT were actually members. He's having ugly scenes playing out. We saw the confrontation the other week. We've seen similar confrontation today. When you talk about the Democratic Party, you now have splits. The members of parliament are saying one thing, the President General is saying another. The same plays out or played out in the UPC. With someone joked that UPC is now basically NRM, Northern Uganda chapter. So you have these splits that become very, very problematic. How is ANT guarding itself against such intrigues and the consequences thereto?
First, I want to say that those scenes that are played out in the political parties in the opposition, very sad, very, very
Can't seem to hear you on Twitter.
Very unfortunate. Yeah, I said that the
Honorable, just check, are you unmuted on Twitter? We can't seem to hear you.
Well, can you hear me now? Yes. Well, at least I can hear Godwin. I don't know whether the listeners can hear me. Okay. So I said that concerning the events happening in some political parties in the opposition, that it's a very frightening sight, actually, that political parties in the opposition are getting torn down by the NRM. And it is the nature of the NRM. It is the ambition of the NRM to destroy the political parties. And that is very unfortunate for our country, because a ruling party would at least think that the opposition should be left alive, if not to thrive, left alive in order for the opposition to give them the necessary checks and balances. But unfortunately, the NRM has torn down the UPC, torn down the DP, is tearing the FDC apart. And I can tell you that given opportunity, NRM will head for any other political party that is in opposition in Uganda. So what do we have to do? We have to, one, build mechanisms internally which allow for cohesion, which allow for conflict resolution, and which allow for open conversation, so that whatever the challenge is, we should be able to exhaust the internal mechanisms. Two, really to keep reminding leaders in the opposition that you need to be grounded in your agenda and in your passion for this country. Without being passionate about the situation, passionate about the people of Uganda, if you are in the opposition to make your next whatever paycheck or something, you will get utterly frustrated, and before you know, you will hand over the political party to the NRM. So those of us in the opposition, I know life in the opposition is extremely, extremely hard. For many of us, we've been dragged to court. The little that you had earned, you paid it in terms of costs and handed to the NRM opponent. And you can't find a job, you can't find a business opportunity. So then you have to choose between upholding the philosophy, the values, and championing the cause for the people that you represent. And the other alternative is, let me also go and eat with them. And I really appeal to colleagues in the opposition to have an enduring spirit, to have a transparent and accountable spirit that will help us to stay on and push on. It's not easy to dislodge a regime that has been there for close to 40 years. You know, this thing is more or less like a marathon. You train yourself, you have to discipline yourself, and you have to be patient with each other. Sometimes challenges will arise, but we have to keep pressing on. For the FDC, I really pray that this incident does not scatter that political party. I hope that they can find mechanisms again to bring it together, to bandage their wounds, and because a strong FDC, a strong NUP, a strong ANT is really good for all of us in the opposition, and it is good for this country. Yes, go ahead.
All right. I'm going to request that if you have a question, you have a comment, you have a contribution to make, whatever, if you want to speak, for the Twitter audience, now is your time. Just request for the microphone. The admin will be able to host you, and then you can ask those questions. and then contribute to the discussion. So how you do that is when you look at your screen, at the bottom to the left, there's an icon that looks like the old microphones. Just press on it. The admin will get notified that you want to ask a question, pass over the microphone to you, and then you'll be able to ask a question. Please do that now as you prepare, and then I give you the chance to contribute to the conversation. Now, Honorable, you said life is really, really tough. And there's a lot of commitment, discipline, poverty in trying to dislodge a government that has been in power for close to 4 decades. I will tell you where life is not tough. Life is not tough in the Muhoozi camp. For the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen him all over the place. He's done the parties, he's done the mobilization, he's done declarations. There's so much going on. But here's the thing I want us to get from you. Sometimes he tweets things like, the NRM is the most reactionary organization that I know. It says the NRM needs to be disbanded, the NRM needs to change. It sounds as if it's opposition. He says things that I would expect of Honorable Alaso or Bobby Wine, and then he says them. So what is Muhoozi's emergency? What does that mean for the traditional opposition parties like ANT and opposition players like you? Is he now an ally? Do you consider him an ally, or is he still an adversary, given his NRM backgrounds?
Well, I don't know the details in the Muhoozi group, but certainly from face value, one, the Muhoozi group uses taxpayers' money. That's what I know. For sure, they use our money. Two, they are abusing our army uniform. That I know. So they are not using their own monies, and they are not struggling. Thirdly, I think it is an internal mechanism in the first family, perhaps to hoodwink Ugandans. I strongly believe, I don't know, it's just a gut feeling. I strongly believe that President Museveni will be around unless God calls him home in 2026. He's going to be the candidate. And therefore, my reading of the Muhoozi group is that they are preparing in terms of maybe eventuality, or for now, to try to recover the youth. You know, young people ran after Chagulanyi a lot, Honorable Chagulanyi. And it's possible that General Muhoozi has been deployed to go after the youth, gather them, give them rice, birthday parties, whatever, so that they stop looking to Honorable Chagulanyi, who they think is youthful, and then they also begin to look at General Muhoozi, who also says the time for the elderly guard is over. I mean, if anybody said what Muhoozi says to his father, most likely they would be dead the next morning, or they would be wiped out one way or the other. So the fact that he can say those things to his father means the father has given him the approval to use that kind of approach to, you know, hoodwink the population. But in terms of what I think about his aspirations, I detest the thinking that Uganda should be turned into a monarchy. I mean, at a personal level, I detest it, because General Muhoozi and General Museveni, they are part and parcel of the one family that has run Uganda for the last so many decades. And so continuation with General Muhoozi looks like a monarchy. But that is a smaller part of my my concern. The big part of my concern is, what if General Muhoozi, like any other Ugandan, really wants to exercise his right to contest? Let him contest for the presidency.
Since you've lost you on Twitter,
but
since you've lost you on Twitter,
so am I audible on Twitter?
Looks like we've lost Honorable. Is he on now? Is she on now?
Hello?
Someone make a sign if you can hear her. A thumbs up if you can, a thumbs down if you can't.
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. Oh, now we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I was saying, but the bigger problem, which is not like detesting the possibility of turning a republic into a monarchy, the bigger problem really is that General Muhoozi needs to stop, one, abusing our uniform. If he wants to come to the political space, let him, there have been retirements and whatever. He can retire from the army and then begin to be part of the conversations around town without anybody fearing the guns, the soldiers, the army, and secondly, then he would not be using our resources to hold birthday parties. And then we square each other intellectually for political engagement. For me, that should be okay. That's my response in regard to that, Godwin.
Okay, yes. So I'll request again that if you have a question or a comment to make, kindly request for the microphone by hitting that icon down to the left of your phone screen. Note that if you're using a PC, you won't be able to speak because Twitter Spaces only allow the audio option to phones, Android or iOS. So just press that and admin will get notified that you want to speak. They will pass the microphone over to you and then you'll be able to speak. Yeah, okay, so let me get back to Honorable. Honorable, you're from Teso, a very, very populous and strong region in this country's politics. If you go back to the days of Bangor, I hope I get that name right, a very, very eminent member in the Legislative Assembly and the Independent Parliament who passed on very recently. And then there is that North and South divide in Ugandan politics. So you see that the ruling party now seems to get really, really hard and serious with the northern side. We've just had the Mao homecoming recently. That is after almost a year of him being hobnobbing with NRM. He says he's not a member of NRM, he's the party president of the DP. The president's letter recently said he is welcome to the NRM. And then that said, you know what happened to the UPC area, the agreement and all that, though they recently clashed in the, was it a Muru by-election? So what is this clamor? And what do you make of it as a AD of the northern bit? If you take even the eastern part of Teso and all those as being part of the north, coming from the NRM.
Well, I do agree with you that there is a deliberate effort by the Museveni government to use all means to recover to capture Teso, Acholi, Lango, and the western regions of the country. And the tactics are not limited to fraudulent elections. They also use a lot of bribery. They use political appointments. And as you know, northern Uganda, the Teso, the eastern North Teso region had been areas where, one, there was the war factor and the government of Uganda mismanaged the issues of cattle raids. And also if you look at currently, the latest time I reviewed the statistics from Mubos was in 2021. The number of people living in extreme poverty, according to the Uganda Household Survey then, was highest in Teso, Karamoja, Lango, and Acholi. So when somebody introduces money to such deprived communities, then the question of day-to-day survival becomes an issue. And that is why in Teso, selling a vote for 1,000 shillings is not a big deal. People even tell you on your face, if you're not giving us 1,000, I mean, my children will sleep hungry. So I'll have to give them the vote. And, so what you see as regaining popularity is actually a second phase of, what I call it, subjugation. Because the first phase was when the NRA had just come in and the ITESO and the Northerners resisted, and then the NRA as an army went in there and fought, and some people were put in the camps and so on and so forth. That was first phase. So then the place stabilized and people came out, but they remained resistant to the idea of the NRM government and its politics in the region. That's why some of us were able to get into politics at that time, because the people believed that the NRM government was not championing their interests. As I talk now, the level of poverty in Teso in northern Uganda is horrible. Sometimes you wonder whether we are part of the same country or not. But now it is the tool of poverty. It is the tool of deprivation. And it is also using those that are in power in the ruling party to subdue their own relatives. It is in Teso that you can go to a hospital and you don't find Panadol, mere Panadol. Panadol, that painkiller. And you can move from this health center to the other one. Children have dropped out of school. People are starving. But when all that is put together and somebody comes and says, okay, now I'm giving you 10,000, they look like they are popular. When you look at the nature of politics that happens in Teso, the army is fully involved. Fully involved. People are beaten, pregnant women are beaten, and so on and so forth. Then when all that is done, then they declare that the NRM candidate got 90%, and then the opposition candidate got 20%, and therefore NRM is more popular. It's, I don't know.
Okay. There are repeated complaints about my echo. I'm trying to take off the earphone, and I think it's not helping matter that much. But let's get to the audience now. I'll allow you, Moses, unmute and speak.
So my point is, like say that they are going to make the aim to make it one, to make it strong. So to me, many people cannot do it. Now, if we want to make it strong, why not put our emphasis and focus on the youth? And here we defend the youth, defend them one the alliance defense of land, and the other place where you can find the graduation. So, like this is of the hands defense of land, the aim to craft to include the students in the university, the local university, Barara, you understand? That's what the aim is, to put more efforts and emphasis on the youth. And that we try getting connection and then we are making the pertinent to the people and explaining this aspiration in Uganda to the people. You can understand. So, in my opinion, that's what I think we ought to do in order to make people to know to the people and in order to attract more people to gain.
Honorable, did you get that question?
Yeah, I have picked the idea Moses has shared. Moses,
okay. So, just a second. Let's take the second one from Joan. Then you respond to both. Joan, please unmute and ask.
Joan? Joan Buteke, please unmute and ask your question. If you're speaking, you're on mute. Okay, Honorable Alaso, please respond as we sort it out with Joan.
Okay, Moses says that we need to focus on the young people in tertiary institutions, and I agree with him. And this is part of the roadmap and strategy that I talked about earlier. The limitation that the Youth League and all of us have currently is the limitation of resources for outreach, because you need to be able to go to those universities and maybe send a team of 2 or 3 people. So if we have volunteers from those universities, then we can start outreach programs in those universities, which may not be as expensive compared to if you had to take outsiders. The difference we currently have with NUP is that NUP has about 50 members of parliament, and so they are able to access resources, contributions from their members, and also contribution from the consolidated fund. So if they seem to be moving fast, it is because they have something to start with. For us, I am still appealing to the members of the party to contribute that 2,000, 5,000, 50,000 monthly, because once we get that culture of a monthly contribution into some 200 members of the party, then we are very certain that every month we can now plan and say, okay, today let's go to Makerere. We sit a group of students down after lectures, and then maybe we can even share with them a bottle of soda as they ask questions. But it's also very complicated to just go there, sit with these young people for 2 hours, and you don't even buy them water. It would be very, you know, I am an elder. I must look like a good and a kind elder, honestly, even when I'm doing party work.
Joan, are you able to speak right now?
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Alaso. And thank you, ANT. I have a few observations to make. I have been listening carefully to what our coordinator has been speaking. I have an issue with, okay, I had her answer the question of the MK project, but I wanted to say that in the strategy on the side of government, it's possible that MK is running under the shadow of his father as a surprise candidate at any time, be it 2026 or another time. It has happened in other countries. In Kenya, where President Daniel Arap Moi brought actually a candidate to Uhuru Kenyatta in 2002. He brought him in late when other candidates could not really prepare enough to counter his emergency, although he lost the election. Because in that case, there was a veteran leader who was Mike Baki, who was able to pull up a good campaign and win the election. It also happened in DRC and in other places. What I'm trying to say is that we cannot assume that he's just going for the youth, because by keeping him under his shadow, he protects him against funding and organization of other parties who would be aggressive in trying to take the presidency from him during the transition. So he moves under that shadow until he actually becomes a candidate. On 12th October, and the election is in February 18th, it's very hard for a candidate to start campaigns. There are many people who would want to come in when they know the president is retiring, but they will not be able to do so because of the time constraint. So as a party, we need to organize knowing that that's a possibility, that someone can actually be running under that shadow and emerge as a surprise candidate or in that time. So we need a strategy, we need a plan, we need to know that we may not just be competing against the old president, but there could be also emergence of a surprise candidate. Thank you.
All right, Byron, please unmute and ask.
Yes, thank you, Toko, and thank you, Honorable. My question is about the mobilization and the party cards. She told us you can get the party cards. She didn't direct us. Are there regional offices? Do they have? Where do we get these cards? And second, on the financing, I didn't get the email here, her email, and also the email for ANT. Thank you.
Thank you. Joan, any luck yet? John is denying us the chance of having a female person asking questions. And they may use that against us and say it was only men that asked. But anyway, so back to you, Honorable. Please respond to those.
Yeah, thank you very much. I do, I appreciate the observation Robert has made, and to the effect that there could be a surprise candidate. Yeah, that's a real possibility. But what do we do for now? What is our own take on it? That's what I perhaps emphasize. Our own take on that is, one, whether he's being prepared as a surprise candidate or later when the father is not there. What we are demanding of government as Ugandans is that they should retire, NRM should retire General Muhoozi, because that he's being active currently in politics, putting on our uniform and using our resources is against the laws that govern the UPDF. It is against our wishes as Ugandans, because no other person is being funded right now to abuse or misuse the uniform or abuse our taxes. So that is one thing. And that is why if we also had resources, our response to either our response in preparation for 2026 would be that we build our structures, we go and market our agenda, we even move around with the party leaders from whom we could even have a possible candidate in 2026, and the voters begin to get used to our faces out there. But again, we are operating at head office, sitting there, trusting God, and I believe that one day God will give us the resources, then we are able to go. Because we also do not want to go over there as a surprise candidates also, who people do not know. That would be very unfortunate for the party. But I agree, you have a valid observation. It is possible in Uganda, anything is possible. The second thing was about where do we get the party cards? Currently, you could get party cards at the party head office on Bukoto, and some of our regional coordinators and district coordinators also have some cards with them. But as I said, we would like to share with you our email address for the office so that we are able to direct you to the nearest possible point where you can buy party cards. Let me just share with you my email address again. Alaso. No. ALASO. Small letters. ALASO. Somebody will have to type that for us, alasoashanut@gmail.com or the allianceug@gmail.com. Are you able to type here with this Toko? Okay. Alaso, ALASO, asianut@gmail.com. Okay, we will share it. Thank you, Godwin.
Okay, for those who have been wondering
about the echo in the background and why she's saying, can we type here? Because this conversation is also on YouTube and happening at the same time on Zoom. But she's going to, the ANT account is going to make a tweet that will have her email address after here. And then you can get it from there. For those who have been listening in via audio, that is on Twitter. So, are there any questions? Because we've come to the tail end of our discussion today. Again, I want to appreciate all those that participated, those that listened in, be it from the beginning or joined at some point. But if you have that question that is burning, you have that concern that is burning, you have that addition that is burning, just hit the microphone icon. Let the admin let you in right now. Anyone? Okay. So I'll move back to the Honorable. Honorable, kindly, as the last thing now, take us through, give us a conclusion from this conversation and give a word of encouragement or a word of advice or a good night wish to our audience, and you call it a day.
All right, thank you very much. First of all, I appreciate you, Godwin, for carrying us through this conversation. And then secondly, I thank all those who have participated in this conversation. I want to encourage you. The Alliance for National Transformation, in our view, is the way to go to really change the political culture in Uganda, to ensure qualitative change and to bring about or to peacefully manage a transition from President Museveni to a more democratic dispensation. So those of you who love Uganda, please put your resources where your love is. I encourage you to take your time, give us your skill, give us your time, give us your money, and we will be able to move this exercise forward. I pray that you mobilize others to support the ANT, and I believe that the good Lord will hear all our prayers. Even as you pray for this country, God will hear us and there will be change. Do not lose hope. It may look like a slow process, but you see, if you're building something strong, you must spend some time building its foundation. And what Uganda needs now is not a shaky structure. Uganda needs a solid foundation for me, for you, for your children's children, and for many more years to come. And that's what the ANT is. Thank you very much for your time, for loving the ANT, and may the Lord bless you all.
Thank you, Honorable. The pleasure is ours, and thank you for the audience members that stayed here the whole of this afternoon. I'm glad that you did. To the Alliance, thank you for giving me the opportunity to host this conversation. So for those that don't know, this conversation happen once every month. The ANT organizes them. We've had General Mugisha Muntu in the past. We've had Alaso. So they bring in the top membership of the party to talk to us, and we talk to them like this. This is normal conversation. We get to hear their view, their opinions of the party, the progress that the party is making, the challenges it is facing. This is a conduit, a link between the party and the members of the public. So my name is Godwin Toko, and I'm glad that I hosted today's conversation. I hope that we continue with the kind of conversation that she's given us here. Even after this discussion, you can tweet, you can watch the video on YouTube if you missed any part, because you have the advantage there of watching a video where judge a facial expression and say, yeah, she got that right. She's lying. She can smile while saying that. So you have that advantage after that. Thank you all, and I wish you a very good night. God bless you all. God bless the ANT. God bless.